Hello, everyone, and welcome to Enterprise Grow. Another segment today, another really good video. So today, I'm so excited to introduce Harry Moser. He's the founder of Reshoring Initiative. Very excited. We're going to be speaking today about manufacturing, reshoring manufacturing. Harry's got 55 years in the manufacturing industry. He's been president of Charmiles Technologies for 22 years. He's received many awards. I'm really excited today to introduce Harry, but I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his background, and we're going to get started right away. Harry?
Thank you. I mean, by the way, that was Charmy Technologies,
Okay.
which is a Swiss machine tool maker, and I was the president for North America for 22 years, retired in 2010.
Nice.
Okay, and before that, I grew up in Elizabeth, New Jersey, where you also grew up, which was a
Yeah.
very nice connection. You know, not too far from each other, and so we've got a lot of things in common like that. So as I grew up there, went to MIT, got degrees in engineering, eventually got an MBA at University of Chicago, worked my way up through companies, ran this good sized $100 million a year machine tool company. Very wonderful job. Couldn't have asked for. Wonderful team, wonderful product, great customers. It was just as good as anybody could have. I was very happy with it, but eventually retired and founded the Reshoring Initiative. And our mission is to balance the goods trade deficit, which would require U.S. manufacturing to grow by about 40%, which would be about 5 million manufacturing jobs. So you could say our goal is to bring back 5 million well-paid manufacturing jobs to the United States. And at the moment, we don't have the people to do that. So one of the challenges is skilled workforce recruitment and training. Yeah.
Harry, let me just interrupt you for a second. So that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about this podcast is, there's the initiatives now with the new administration coming in. There's a real focus on trying to get, with supply chain and all of that, trying to get the manufacturing back to the United States. So when I heard that you wanted to work to get 5 million good paying jobs back to the US, that's what got me very excited. So can you just talk a little bit about that? I know you mentioned the 40% increase for the trade, but if you'd focus on that a little bit, how you're achieving that mission, I think my audience would really like to hear more about that.
Okay, so we have, you might say, three pillars of what we do. First, we document the trend. So we make clear that when we started in 2010, we identified about 11,000 jobs coming back that year. And last year, 2023, in the year, 287,000 jobs coming back. So we had this very nice, not continuous, a little bumpy, but more or less continuous trend up like this. And so in total, we've identified 1.5 million, 2 million jobs that have either been reshored by US companies or FDI, foreign direct investment, by foreign headquartered companies. So General Motors versus, say, Toyota. And so we document the trend. And one of the reasons we document it is so company A can see that companies B and C have reshored and done so successfully, that company A will then consider doing it themselves. So we document the trend, we promote it like we're promoting it right now. And everybody who hears this will be motivated to at least consider it, to do the math, to see if it makes sense for them. And then we enable it. So we have all kinds of tools to help the companies do the analysis and then to actually do the reshoring.
Okay. I know my audience is a little curious about, bringing these jobs back. Some of them announcing their plans, some of them want to shorten their supply chain, some of them because of disruptions. Can you talk a little bit about what you see companies, for those companies that are on the fence thinking about this, what would you say to them, to consider, coming back here?
I think that, let's just say, survey by Chief Executive Magazine about a year ago said that the number one driving force for reshoring is geopolitical risk.
Hmm.
Right? So for companies who are getting directly from China or Taiwan components or products, or whose supply chain in the US is getting components to be assembled into a sub-assembly and shipped up. So if there's product coming in from China or Taiwan, there's a risk
Yeah.
of war. I
Yeah.
don't, and China says some people say they're going to do something by 2027. Other people say they'll never do it. So it's not certain, but that's what risks are, uncertainties. And so we came out about 6 months ago with a geopolitical risk map that shows the probability of a US company being decoupled, cut off from its supply chain offshore in each of the major countries. And for China, based on survey data, we concluded the annual probability is 3.5%, so 3.5%. A very moderate kind of number, but still something. And so we say what companies should do is say, if I couldn't get those products from China and Taiwan, what would I do? Well, they'd call local US suppliers, and the US supplier would say, sorry, Bill, I had 1,000 calls already this morning because everybody else has the same problem, and I'm going to take care of my existing customers. And so therefore, the company should say, if I can't get those products from China, how much revenue will I lose for that year or 2 years? How much margin will I lose? What's multiplied times the probability? So what's the expected value of loss? And therefore, how much more should I be willing to pay now to make the product here in the US, so that if that happens, I will not be cut off from supply, I will not be put out of business by that existential risk.
Nice.
So we've got the tools to help them make that decision.
Beautiful. Harry, where can people get a copy, or where can they look at that geopolitical map that you say you created?
Yeah, it's on our website, and our website is
Okay.
reshorenow.org.
Okay.
Okay, and they can go there, go to the blogs, and it's 6
Okay.
months back in the blogs, something like
Beautiful.
that. If they can also go to Industry Week magazine. We did an article for Industry Week, and which starts off with a map and gives a shortened version of what's on the website.
Beautiful. And after we're finished recording today, I will put a link to your website so that people can connect with you and click on that.
Yep,
Oh,
thank you.
yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned China. And can you talk a little bit about some of the trends since 2010 that's been driving this?
Well, let's start with 2000. So
Okay.
China joined the WTO right around 2000, and we had a precipitous decline in U.S. manufacturing as company after company either built factories in China to produce and ship stuff here, shutting down the U.S. factory, or outsourced. They bought their castings, their machine parts, their electrical wire harnesses, whatever. They bought their things over there to come and maybe still assemble here. And so we lost just tons of work, 2 million jobs maybe over that 10-year period, just to China. And then since then, since 2010, which is when we founded the Reshoring Initiative, that rate of loss has slowed down. We're not losing as much. Today, we're not losing anything to speak of to China, because people are getting the hell out of China. And but in total, we lost 2 million, or something like that, jobs to China. And if it had just been China, it wouldn't have been so bad. But at the same time, we were losing them to Mexico and and Korea and India and Vietnam, and all kinds
Mhm.
of other places. And so the totality of that comes out to this 5 million jobs that we've lost, and which we can regain by reshoring, by importing less and exporting more.
Beautiful. Harry, why is it important, do you think, to bring back those jobs, like to balance trade?
Yeah. Uh, I'd say simplistically, if any country has to be somewhat self-sufficient, and especially the arsenal of democracy, the leading country in the world, the one that sort of protects the shipping lanes of the world, et cetera, has to be able to make some things, certainly military things. You don't want to be dependent on everybody else for your military, but also, the much of the rest of what you consume. And we don't think we're being greedy by saying we want balance. We want imports to equal exports. Whereas, say, in Germany or China, exports are, I don't know, 30% larger than imports, or 40% larger. So you're sort of greedy, as one might say. And so if you don't do this, or let's say the results of losing those jobs, 5 million well-paid manufacturing jobs. Manufacturing is typically higher paid, or traditionally higher paid than services. Um, Pollution. When you produce it here, instead of producing it there, especially if there is China, you reduce emissions by 25% or more. Partially because of the shipping, but also because the electricity in China is very coal intense, and ours has very little coal. And so when the electricity used to make the product there is much more polluting. Okay, so emissions. So income equality, you get those good jobs. Filling back in that middle class helps to make the income equality curve a lot smoother. So you don't have this feeling that the rich are taking everything and the middle class is being deprived. In terms of the US budget deficit, you probably know we have roughly a $2 trillion a year budget deficit, federal budget deficit, and a accumulated debt that's up to over 100% of GDP. And if we had those jobs, we had those people working, those companies paying taxes, those people paying taxes, the deficit would be smaller, the debt would be smaller. So all kinds of good reasons like that.
Okay. Why do you think we have such a large trade deficit?
Okay. We did a survey about 6 years ago, maybe, with Plant Moran, which is one of the
Okay.
largest auditing and consulting companies. That used to actually audit our company, my old company, and very good people. And so we did a survey and we asked manufacturers and distributors, to the extent that you sell imported product, is that you bring product in, why do you do that? Why don't you get it here? And overwhelmingly they said price. They
Okay.
want, which everybody knows, but it's nice to have it documented. Overwhelmingly they said price, and if they didn't say price, the other things they mentioned were based on price. Like some of them said, because I cannot get the product here.
Mm.
Okay, and then you have to ask yourself, if 50 years ago the US made half of or 100 years ago, we made half of everything that was made in the world, like right after World War II, and you can get everything here except for maybe bananas and things like that. And why don't we make that product, that material here anymore? Because other low wage countries took over that market, got the price so low that our industry went out of business. So when you put it all together, we say at least 70% of the decision to buy offshore is price driven. And so why is the price, but how much lower is the price? So we did a survey, we have the total cost of ownership, one of our tools, and the users analysis. And when you look at their data, the average Chinese price, factory price, is about 65 or 70% of the US price. So 35% lower. And for companies looking at that, they say, I gotta go.
Yeah.
And so we've allowed, and so then the question is, why is the Chinese price so low? A couple of things. First, we've lost a lot of the skills and productivity that we should have. We don't have a good recruitment and training system like the Germans and the Swiss have, the apprenticeship system. That's hurt. But second, the dollar is generally agreed to be 20 or 30% higher than the market would normally dictate. And that's because the US is the reserve currency. So everybody stores their money here, forces up the value of the dollar. And that makes the US a tough place to be a factory, good place to be a bank, a bad place to be a factory. And so those are the reasons that's gotten the US price to be out of line relative to the rest of the world.
Those are all excellent points. Really, really good points. You know, as I talk to manufacturing companies, I might get bits and pieces, but you seem to round everything up to be very inclusive, and I really like that. I think manufacturing companies are going to really enjoy this. And you know, I like the total cost of ownership as well, because CFOs are very keen on trying to, you know, rule in costs, right? It's something that I know all companies, but especially for manufacturing, they're dealing with all kinds of disruptions, maybe some digital transformation from manual process into software, all kinds of things. So that's good. I'm going
So,
to,
long as you mentioned the total cost, why don't I explain it to them a little bit? So
sure.
most companies make their decision on where to make or source things based on price, FOB price, Ex Works price, manufacturing cost. And like I said, you can get things in China for 65, 70%, sometimes 30% of what you can get them for in the US. And but that's not that's only a part of the picture. So the TCO estimator on our website, free to use, you have to sign up and sign in. The user puts in the FOB price here and there, and then answers a series of questions that then add in the duty and the freight and the carrying cost of inventory, the risk of stocking out, all 29 different things like this. And when you do that, based on price, the US wins 8% of the time. Based on total cost, 32% of the time. And
Mhm.
if there's a Trump 25% tariff, the Section 301 tariffs, if one of those are applied to the product, then the US wins 50% or more of the time. So just by getting the company to do the math correctly,
Right.
millions of jobs will come back just by doing the math correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. Um, Can you, I know you touched on it, but can you dive a little bit deeper into the your reshoring initiative offer to help companies benefit? Can you go through some of the, I know you talked about TCO, you talked about geopolitical risk. Um, some of the other things you talked, if you could talk about,
Oh,
um, trends, uh, ISP for SMEs, SCG, companies and states. I know the states are starting to gear up for, you know, the economic revolution, so to speak, that's coming. I did a podcast recently with Indiana. So Indiana has some really nice initiatives for new companies. I think Ohio, South Carolina, these are all really nice initiatives now. So can you talk a little bit about that?
yeah. Let me start with, you mentioned ISP,
Yeah.
Import Substitution Program. It's on our website under resources. And in it, a company, let's say you're a company out there and you're making widgets of some kind, pumps, whatever, something, right? Pumps. And we can tell you who the biggest importers are of that kind of pump,
Okay.
what tonnage they bring in, some idea of what they're paying for it, whom they buy it from,
Mm,
right? So he can tell you, we can in effect give you leads. Because who's a good person to sell to? Right now, someone who's importing something like that from China and is worried they're going to get cut off because of either tariffs or war, they should be receptive. They should be looking for a new home. And so we train you to use the TCO estimator to estimate all those costs and risks. And then we identify those importers, and then our client company, has to figure out whom to contact at the company. We don't tell you call Bill Smith and here's his phone number. You've got to figure that out. Okay.
yeah.
And then once you get to Bill, you say, hey, I see you're bringing in 50 tons a year of pumps, and we'll be making pumps like that for these companies. And we've got a new machine that's really good at making them, and
Mm-hmm.
we've got extra. I'd love to make them for you. And we've done an analysis, we think, from your perspective, and we think you'll be at least as well off economically, or maybe better off. and you'll help your community, our community, and the country. So let's figure how to make this work for both of us, kind of thing.
Yeah, the more you're, telling us about Reshoring Initiative, the more I get excited because it's chock full of what manufacturing companies need now. The fact that you actually offer this data for them, this analysis, these importers, that this is just really chock full to help, manufacturing companies who are thinking about coming back. And, I'll just plug Enterprise Grow for a second. They can also go to Enterprise Grow, and if they needed some help getting that, the contacts, the personas, who to call, maybe some appointments, please check it out. We'd be happy to help.
Let me clarify one thing. The TCO estimator is free. Our library is free. Company can go there, and let's say they sell to the automotive industry.
Okay.
Okay, they could, and they're in Indiana. And so they could go into our library and say, show me all the cases of reshoring into Indiana in the automotive industry from China, for example. And then it'll come up with all the cases that match that and the article from which we got the data. And then they can read the article, find the VP, whatever, call the VPs. Hey, I see you're bringing back, whatever. We can make some of those things for you, kind of thing.
Very
So
nice.
that's free to you. The import substitution program, which I described, we charge for because we have to do work to make that happen.
Sure.
That's a charged service.
Okay. Okay. It's still like what are the objectives, for today's call again for my audience of manufacturing companies is to give them resources, right? They don't have to spend the time trying to find a company like Reshoring Initiative, and then vet them. We have Harry Moser today, right, that can help you. So, um, can you talk a little bit about what should companies do as far as OEMs?
And what OEMs should do?
Yeah.
Okay, so we say the OEMs should look at where they're dependent on China and Taiwan and figure if there's something they can do. We call it insurance, just like they have. Do you have fire and flood insurance? Yes. Well, we think you should have geopolitical risk or China insurance. So the risk, because that fire, if you have a fire, say you have 10 factories, the fire might get one of them in a
Yeah.
given year, might get one. But if you've got 10 factories and all of them are bringing in components from China and there's a war, you could have all 10 of your factories shut down. So we think you should have geopolitical risk insurance, and the best risk insurance is to make the products here in the United States and no longer have that risk.
Mm-hmm.
That comes off the table. So for the OEMs, we recommend that, and then we recommend using the TCO to do what we call buying smarter. To recognize all these costs and risks that they've been ignoring over the years, and typically their purchasing people, their procurement people, are rewarded based on a purchase price variance.
Okay.
I used to buy this basket of parts for $5 million, and my job next year is to buy it for $4.5 million or something like that. And looking only at the price instead of looking at the total cost. So, for example, I've had salesmen, like machine shop salesmen, come into me and say, Harry, I'm trying to convince the customer. He says, I got to match the China price. And I told the customer, I know you've been having quality issues. You've got warranty issues. You've got delivery issues. And I won't give you any of those problems. So you ought to be willing to pay me more. And the buyer says, those aren't my problem. Those are in someone else's budget. Okay. So you've got to eventually convince the company to stop having silos and take a holistic approach that looks at all the costs and risks throughout the company and sees the advantage that reshoring brings to
Sure.
them.
Yeah, that's really good information. What should the government do you think?
Okay, well.
I know that's a big question, but in lieu of, our subject today, the industrial policy,
Yeah,
making the level playing field, that
yeah,
sort of thing. If you could touch on that, that would be good.
yeah. Yeah, to figure out what to do, you should go back to the root causes of the problem. And
Okay.
the root cause of the problem is that our cost, our price here is too high relative to there, and not just China, but in many countries around the world. And so the key is to take that difference and shrink it like this. And to us, the best way, first absolute necessary thing is skilled workforce.
Mhm.
So like Germany and Switzerland, Austria have these excellent apprentice programs. 60% of the kids, really smart kids, kids that here would, you'd say, go to state university, kind of
Yeah.
thing. You just, and there, instead, they go into toolmaker, welder, precision machinist. Many of them do that, and eventually still wind up becoming the vice president, president of the company. Okay,
Mm.
some eventually get a degree, some don't. And so first is skilled workforce. We have to, if I were the czar, and if I controlled everything, I would shut down 25% or 30% of the universities.
Mm.
Okay, and and focus the remaining ones more on engineering and manufacturing and business and things like that. And there'd be fewer anthropology and sociology majors working in Starbucks. and 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 I would emphasize. I'd be telling the guidance counselors to tell the students the truth about the fact that that kind of a profession, people call it a trade, I call it a profession, that kind of a profession actually pays off as well or better than most university degrees. So we would have maybe apprenticeship loans as much as we have college loans. We would incentivize companies to hire apprentices uh, so that they would be receptive to the apprentice looking for the job. So things like that would get skilled workforce, what we need. Second, to get costs down, get the dollar down. So the dollar, when you figure out our price in dollars and the Chinese or Indian price in dollars, you have the currency, that you use to calculate. And the dollar is generally agreed to be 20% or so overvalued because we're the reserve currency. And so I would take some of that 20% out. And so now all of a sudden the price difference comes down like this. And alternatively, or in addition, tariffs. So Trump is tariff man. He's pushing very hard on tariffs, 10%, 60%, all kinds of different things. So we say that if you're going to use tariffs, the tariff should apply to all products from all countries forever, as opposed to the sort of chaotic thing we've had in the past, to this country but not that. If you do it to China but not to Vietnam, then China ships its product to Vietnam, relabels it, and ships it to us. You see,
Mm.
and if you do it to steel but not products made out of steel, then our price for steel is too high relative to the price in the other country. And so the machine shop here is starting at a disadvantage because his material cost is too high compared to the competition. So you want to do it to all products from all countries forever. So for us, the simplest thing would be a value-added tax, which most countries have. And they put a tax on imports and they subsidize exports. It works for them. It would work for us. And so rather than all the taxes he's talked about, I would do a value-added tax. But if I can't do that, then I would go for moderate, 10%, 15% taxes on everything. Sort of the minimum of what he seems to be recommending.
Okay. Harry, we only have a few minutes left, and I have some other key questions I want to get to. Can you tell me what industries in manufacturing you think are surging?
Okay, well, clearly in the last two years of the Biden administration, um, there's been hundreds of billions of dollars committed to help chips
Mm-hmm.
and EV batteries and solar and pharma and a few other areas where the US clearly is at a disadvantage, where we have supply chain gaps. And
Mm-hmm.
so those are all surging. In fact, $100 billion, $200 billion worth of factories being built. And so then there's a challenge of finding the people, first the construction workers and then the
Right.
factory workers with skills, to make that happen. So those are surging, but I get calls. I had a call a while back from someone starting a shoe factory
Mm.
in the United States, something you'd expect not to be made here. I had calls recently from Korean companies. So we also deal with foreign direct investment, foreign companies that want to build factories here. And I've had a couple of Korean companies call that have various technology products that they want to make here. There's a group in Ohio called the Ohio Fund,
Okay.
and they've gathered a big bunch of money, and you're using it, and they're helping companies, especially foreign companies, build factories in the United States. And they've done a first deal with some kind of an electronics company and from China, and they've announced it, and it looks like it's going to do very well. So there's a lot of action all over the map.
Yeah. You know, I'd have to agree with you. I think pharma, semiconductor, I think are the two hottest industries at this time. Only a couple more questions. What has the US learned, do you think, from supply chain disruptions?
Yeah, clearly, we're too dependent.
Okay,
During the COVID, we couldn't get PPE. And as we learned, we don't make those things here. That's horrible. So,
right.
and I know people who invested millions and then started PPE factories, masks and gowns and things. And then COVID was over, and the hospitals that had been complaining about nobody makes those here then went back and bought the cheap ones from China. And my friends who invested the millions went out of business.
Hmm.
And so the hospital complains when things are bad, but they're not willing to invest their money to help the US supplier stay in business during the good times, so that they'll be available during the lean times. Okay. And so that's, you can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
But doing something about the dollar, doing something about tariffs would make it easier for those hospitals and so on to see the virtues here.
It's been a real pleasure talking to you today, Harry. I hope we can do this again. We only touched on the surface of, the reshoring and your company reshoring initiative. Some of today's takeaways include identifying the products most eligible to reshore. We didn't even talk about that. Maybe we could have another discussion on that. Quantify the costs and risks of offshoring, the total cost. And again, you have your tool on your website companies can use. Convincing companies to reshore and buy here and help them see, a slightly higher total cost as insurance against geopolitical risk. That was a big one. And get publicity for helping customers reshore. So if people wanted to get a hold of you, I know I'm going to put the link below. How is the best way to get a hold of you, Harry?
Oh, certainly put the link up, but I encourage you to put up my email address.
Okay, just why don't you give it to us right now?
Harry.Moser, M-O-S-E-R, at reshorenow.org.
Okay.
And they can call me 847-867-1144. And my job, first, I'd love to hear about what you've done in terms of reshoring and add it to our database. I'd even more so love to help you make it happen. Also love to help you decide to have apprenticeship programs and push the benefit of skilled workforce. So I'm wearing my manufacturing
Yes.
is cool t-shirt here, which we give away one of these to every company who reports a reshoring case we did not know about. And so naturally,
I love
this
it.
shirt is made in the United States out of US cotton. So I hope some of you will come to me with reshoring cases and earn the shirt.
Yeah, I really, really like the shirt. I was going to ask you to show the audience before we started recording. Harry was explaining to me. I love it. Okay, so if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, would you go ahead and do that and hit the like button? And please feel free to share the video. I want to thank Harry Moser again from Reshoring Initiative. It was a pleasure speaking to him. And again, if you have any questions or you want some key information on, getting your business up and running here from a sales and marketing perspective in manufacturing, please go to my website, enterprisegrow.com. Harry, thanks again today, and have a nice weekend.
Thanks, Eileen. Same. Good holiday.